Let's try again now and speak to former Nelson Mandela Bay Metro Mayor Athol Trollip, who we're going to be discussing some of the water issues with him. Mr. Trollip, I hope it's a better line to you this afternoon now. Let's talk about how you think, in your view, we got to this point, because you were once at the helm and now, day zero, residents are very upset.
Yes, good evening, Bongiwe. Thank you very much. I think it could have been averted. This scenario has been imminent for a long, long time, and Nelson Mandela Bay is essentially a city of two halves. The one half on the eastern side will not have a day zero. It has water that comes from the Former Dam, which essentially comes out of the eastern Lesotho highlands. So the water security on the eastern part of the city is fine. The western part of the city is going to run out of water unless we have some torrential rain, which is not predicted in the near future. And there are two reasons for that. First of all, Nooit Gedacht was made up of 3 stages, and that's the water purification treatment works that takes the water out of the Fish River scheme and treats the water and sends it to Nelson Mandela Bay in the eastern part of the city. That water is not reticulated to the rest of the city in the west, and that has taken a long time for that to happen. First of all, the 3 phases of Nooit Gedacht were behind schedule by a number of years because the which was that failed to pay, the contractors, and they were on and off site for a number of years. And that has really been the biggest challenge, because reticulating the water to the rest of the city shouldn't be a difficult issue, but it's way behind schedule. And now the knock-on effect of missing deadlines is starting to become a reality. The dams that are in the western part of the province are in a critical state, and one of the dams, the Impofu Dam, can no longer have water abstracted out of it. So we are preparing ourselves for water shedding in Nelson Mandela Bay, but all in the municipality. So essentially, this could all have been averted if contracts were held to the deadlines that were supposed to have been met, and that the contractors were paid on time. And secondly, we should have done much better with dealing with water leaks and also the billing system. Poor people get 6 kilolitres of water free, and if they use more than that, there's absolutely no consequence. So there's poor water management in Nelson Mandela Bay.
I remember in 2017 already you held that emergency media briefing, for example, sounding the alarm, talking about how the situation is going to get worse if there are no punitive measures that are being implemented at the same time. Fast forward, we're speaking to various experts. They lay some of the blame on the municipal officials and also some of those in council, saying that political bickering is also responsible largely for what we are seeing happening here, because there's a lot of that in council chambers and not enough action on the ground. I wonder if you agree with those sentiments.
I agree wholeheartedly, but it's not just political bickering. Unfortunately, Nelson Mandela Bay is notorious for political bickering. I think one of the greatest challenges is that political authorities, the people that are in leadership positions, just don't want to do or make difficult decisions. There was an initiative to put water throttling devices onto people that were using water excessively, including businesses and private residences. There was opposition to that. So what we have in Nelson Mandela Bay essentially is a government that is not prepared to take the tough decisions and not prepared to hold people to account. And that's all well and good when there is water. But when we run out of water, then those pigeons come home to roost very badly. And I think that the consequences of water shedding are going to be dire for Nelson Mandela Bay. And I just wish that politicians understand that you've got to take tough decisions in time to prevent the kind of inconvenience and hardships that will come with water shedding. I heard an official from Nelson Mandela Bay saying this week that people will start using water if they have to carry water. Now, we don't live in medieval times. We live in a city in Nelson Mandela Bay, which is the biggest metro in our province. And I think it's complete crisis that we have to now revert to carrying water in buckets. And that must be the responsibility of the political leadership of the city. And I think they must take full responsibility for that. And I think there's a by-election, for example, in KwaNobuhle on the 6th of July. And KwaNobuhle is the first part of Nelson Mandela Bay that's going to run out of water. And I believe that the voters are going to punish the politicians and hold them responsible for the state of affairs.
Talking about responsibility, this problem is, as some have said, 7 years in the making. They look at the drought, they point at some of the climate change issues as well as the political issues that we've just spoken about that are taking place in council. As a former mayor, do you take some responsibility at all for what we are now seeing happening in Nelson Mandela Bay?
No, absolutely. I must take some responsibility. I was the mayor from 2016 to 2018. If we were able as a city to put more pressure on provincial government and the Amatole Water Board to meet their deadlines and pay their contractors, I think that we would have been 2 years better off. But, it was very difficult. We were a non-ANC aligned government, and we had very little leverage on the ANC provincial government and Amatole Water Board, which is pretty much an entity, a private entity, state-owned entity, that really have been quite notoriously bad at meeting deadlines. And they're now been given the responsibility by the provincial government to handle the crisis that Nelson Mandela Bay are in. So yes, I do take some responsibility that we were behind on some deadlines. But as a non-ANC-led government, I ran a DA-led coalition in Nelson Mandela Bay, and the ANC weren't really interested in cooperating with us to deal with the challenges of the day. So yes, I do take some responsibility, but it's very difficult working with an obstructive government that doesn't want you to succeed.
All right, Mr. Trollip, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and giving us a sense of, from your view, of how we got to this particular point, because this is a worrying situation. As you say, one part of the metro is going to be without water, but the other is going to be, really okay, and certainly residents not being happy about the situation. Thank you so much for your perspectives there. I do appreciate it. That's former Mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay, Athol Trollip.